Hi, I'm David Huboi, Chairman of the Green Business Committee of the San Benito County Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Going Green TV. This show promotes economic vitality along with environmental sustainability. Along with my co-host, Shawn Novack, we will be interviewing our special guest, State Assemblyman Luis Alejo of the 30th District. In addition, I will be reporting on the Pinnacles National Park redesignation ceremony. Well, let's get started. Welcome to Going Green, Luis.
Welcome.
And Shawn?
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to give you a little background. First of all, the 30th District, that encompasses the extreme southern San Francisco Bay Area, inland Monterey Bay Area, which includes all of San Benito County, and parts of the northern central coast. Luis was born and raised in Watsonville, and the Assemblyman's family came to work in the agricultural fields of the Salinas, Santa Clara, and Pajaro valleys as migrant farm workers in the 1950s. Assemblyman Alejo graduated from the University of California with 2 degrees. It's a bachelor's degree in political science and Chicano studies, and obtained his master's of education degree from Harvard University in administration, planning, and social policy. He received his Juris Doctorate from the University of California at Davis School of Law. And after finishing his graduate and professional studies, the Assemblyman returned to his hometown in Watsonville to work as a legal aid attorney. And he worked as a staff attorney for the Monterey County Superior Court. And before his election to the state legislature, he was mayor of Watsonville and then went on to represent District 2 of the Watsonville City Council. Okay, and so welcome again to Going Green after the intro here. And
thanks for that great introduction.
Yeah, great. It's quite an impressive resume here. But I guess just first of all, you've been pretty busy lately. I mean, you got married recently in December. That's right. At a nice setting there in San Juan Bautista, right?
Beautiful place to have a ceremony. So there's exciting things happening in my life. So that's great. Thank God for that.
And you won your election in November.
Yeah, overwhelmingly, thanks to all the voters. So I'm very proud to continue serving as your assembly member.
Great. Well, I know my co-host, Shawn Novack here, who is the Water Conservation Program Manager of the Water Resources Association of San Benito County, has some questions that we want to get started with on water issues. Okay. So, Shawn, I'll just give it over to you.
Thank you again for being on the show, first of all. But I've been following your career, and I know you've been doing a lot of work kind of championing the idea of clean water for all Californians. One of my agency's missions is to protect our water resources, and although the Hollister urban area doesn't have a contaminated water supply, I was surprised to read on the state water quality, the regional boards, that there's 265 areas that are small community water systems that have contaminated groundwater that they use and treat for their people. And I know you've been doing a lot of work in that area, so could you tell us some of the work you're doing?
Right, well, I think the issue of clean water for our hardworking families is a critical issue, but I think California is facing a crisis right now with over 21 million people get their water from contaminated water supplies. Wow. Out of those 21 million, over 2 million people in California, when they turn on that faucet, what's coming out of it is contaminated water. And that's really unfortunate in a state that's so rich and beautiful like California is, that we have over 2 million people who are still having contaminated water delivered to their homes, and many times posing a great risk to their families, to their health, because these are toxic contaminants in the water. Yeah. So I feel very privileged to represent a beautiful agricultural area here of California, one of the most beautiful areas in the world, but at the same time there's thousands of people who work out in the fields, farm worker families, that also have a right that when they get home they have safe drinking water coming out of their faucet.
That's great. I had no idea it was that widespread. But well, that leads me to my next question. Is in the opening, David mentioned that your family came here in the 50s as migrant farm workers, and you worked in Salinas, you worked in the Pajaro Valley, and also part of Santa Clara Valley. And you grew up in Watsonville, so you know the importance of water and agriculture to this area in particular. And how has that shaped your perspective as a legislator?
Right, well, being a child and grandchild of migrant farm workers who came here to work in California in the Salinas Valley and here in Gilroy during the 1950s, we understand how important agriculture is. It's the gateway for so many different people. Mm-hmm. My family was Mexican origin, but many generations before that were Japanese farm workers, right. Italian farm workers, Filipino, Chinese, people of all different backgrounds, Irish, So I think that's a common thing that bonds us all together. We have a common history, and agriculture was the gateway. But at the same time, you understand that in the future, water is going to be a vital part of making sure agriculture stays strong. But also you have to balance that out with other needs of our families, which is that they should have something so basic as safe drinking water. And that's my job as a policymaker in Sacramento, to find that balance, how to keep agriculture strong and vibrant. It's our largest industry here in California, over $25 billion. But at the same time, all the people who work out in those fields should have a right to have safe drinking water. And for me, it's big. But there's recent studies that are coming out showing that if California doesn't address this major problem right now, it could cost the state over $40 billion over the next 20 years to clean up contaminated water throughout the state. So there's a lot of important lessons to learn right now, and all of us in Sacramento should be making this a priority to really address and come up with a comprehensive solution to dealing with this, this very expensive problem that we're facing.
Yeah, I live in the water world, all through the week, and I think a lot of people just don't realize, some of the things that are going on. Which leads me to my next question. The Sacramento and San Joaquin Delta area provides a lot of water to most of the state. Matter of fact, for the people at home, most of the precipitation occurs in California north of the Delta area, about 66% of our precipitation, and the demand for that water is south of the Delta. So they figured out back in the 1920s that we've got to move that water down to the southern part of the state. It's more arid, there's more population there. But that system's getting antiquated. There's some severe environmental problems there. There's the question of climate change, that's happening. So that whole system relies on our snowpack in the Sierra that comes out through there. And so they've been talking for years, since I was in junior high school, about rebuilding the Delta up there. And I know there's been a lot of movement in the last year. Can you give us a little update on what's going on
Absolutely.
up there?
Well, we all know this was a big issue for Governor Jerry Brown when he was in office the first time around, over 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And 30 years later continues to be a big issue of a discussion in Sacramento. But I think this is, 2013 is a critical year for us to have this discussion. There was a water bond package that was agreed upon in 2009. Never got to the voters to take a vote on because voters, I think at that time, were kind of concerned about the enormity of the water bond. It was over $11 billion.
Yes.
I think voters were really questioning, do you need to have that huge of a water bond, that expensive a water bond? But the discussion this year is going to focus on in bringing that number down to a reasonable amount that we think voters would be supportive of, but also really focusing on areas that we could find a lot of agreement on water recycling, water reuse, conservation efforts, and certainly the Delta is a big part of that. And it was a big part of the discussion several years ago, making sure that we're focusing on water reliability, but also the ecosystems conservation part.
Sure.
But there was another aspect to that discussion, which was also making sure the communities in the Delta also benefit and would benefit from any water bond package, as the Delta is a critical part of our water system here in California.
Huge.
So I would assume we're going to be having a lot of discussions. Several bills have already been introduced to start focusing the discussion in on what would this water package look like. And when you talk about water bond, a lot of different interests come into play. Everybody has different points of view what should be put into a package, but it'll be a focal point for us in Sacramento.
That's great. I know there's many interests involved, so it's trying to satisfy everybody is a hard thing to do.
It's a hard thing to achieve, absolutely.
Yeah, but I appreciate the work you're doing on that. But that leads me to our groundwater supplies, because we depend on a lot of that throughout the state. San Benito County is no different. We supply most of the urban area, comes from our groundwater supply at this moment. So the State Water Quality Control Board has been focusing on programs to protect our groundwater supplies. Discharge requirements for wastewater become more stringent. Agricultural customers are required to monitor and identify pollutants and try to reduce them as much as possible. But these new rules and regulations are causing a lot of heartburn for the ranchers, municipalities, and farmers. And I just wanted to ask you, do you think all these programs that they're coming up with, do you think they're essential for protecting our groundwater supplies? Right.
Well, that's a very good question. These rules that our local regional water board wanted to come up with was very controversial last year. It had the agricultural community kind of in an uproar because of their concerns regarding the proposed regulations that they felt could really put a lot of their farms out of business.
Sure.
So what my job is try to come up with the balancing. Could we incentivize the agricultural industry to take leadership and really try to address the issues of water contaminants in our area, here in the Salinas Valley and throughout the Monterey Bay? It's nitrates, which are the residues of fertilizers that trickle into the ground. And and a lot of the agricultural community wanted to step up and take leadership, but they wanted a way to incentivize them to address the problem rather than coming down with something that was punitive, that could possibly put small farms out of business. And so I supported the agricultural proposal. They wanted to address it, but let's do something that's reasonable that won't necessarily put their farms out of business. And so that was a compromise that we were trying to achieve. And the issue of nitrates is critical because this week a study came out by the State Water Board really showing how it's going to continue to be a big problem because some water systems, the state ordered communities not to drink any more water. Here locally, it was in South Monterey County, the small farmer community, San Bernardo, could not drink the water because of the high levels of nitrates. And people might not have heard of nitrates before, but this is basically those residues of fertilizers that if you were to drink them are very toxic to your health. They're tied to cancer, but very dangerous for pregnant mothers and for infants. They could suffer what's called blue baby syndrome, meaning that those nitrates end up sucking all the oxygen out of their blood, and they end up having a bluish color, and really could put their lives in danger. And there's been families in South Monterey County that have luckily endured that, but have suffered through that type of a crisis. So that's where, for me, my job is trying to find that balance. And if we're going to pass regulations, let's have some that are reasonable, that have the ag industry lead the way. We saw that when there was a crisis of E. coli in the spinach industry. It was the agriculture community that came out with the leafy greens regulations and standards that really had led the way. It became a national standard for having food safety and agricultural products. That was an example where they were able to lead rather than coming down in a punitive manner. So I think we got to find those balancing approaches that are reasonable and in the end are going to result in reducing the level of nitrates in the groundwater as well.
That's good. That's good. Well, you know, as I was saying, the Hollister urban area, we don't have contaminated water, but the wastewater discharge regulations and there's new drinking water standards that are coming into play. We're having to do some upgrades to our water treatment plant. As a matter of fact, there's plans to build a new one on the west side of town and expand the one on the east side of town, so we'll get a lot better quality water going through the urban area, which in turn will make a better quality wastewater as it leaves people's homes. So that will help us meet our wastewater discharge. And what I'm excited about is that will also give us an opportunity to recycle the water and use it again, so we can use it for ag or landscape accounts. But you know, these things, we're looking at about approximately $30 million to do these expansions. And I just wondered, you know, the Association of California Water Agencies endorse these kind of regional plans because the ones involved with this in the Hollister urban area are the Sunny Slope County Water District, the City of Hollister, and the San Bernardino County Water District. So they're working collaboratively, which is always good because then everybody's interest is taken into consideration. And then, you know, I just kind of want to know, what is the state doing to encourage and facilitate projects like this? Because you know how it is with any project like this, there's just so much red tape and bureaucracy. Are there any incentives or for the expansion of sustainable practices? Or do you have
Well, I think in Sacramento, it's been moving towards that, coming up with some regional approaches, because sometimes, as you said, wastewater treatment systems or drinking water cleanup systems are very expensive in the multi-million-dollar projects, and if they were able to have to do one in each little community, it could end up costing taxpayers millions of dollars. So certainly when you have that type of collaboration between different agencies at the local level, trying to come up with common solutions, you get the economies of scale, products that are much more affordable. And I think on the drinking water side, you've seen more of that movement in that direction. One of the bills I introduced a couple weeks ago with the support of the governor is a regional approach to clean up the drinking water in the Salinas Valley. And the governor has approved supporting, allocating $2 million for that project. But instead of focusing on every little community in the Salinas Valley, the governor is encouraging a regional approach to get that economies of scale. And I think we're going to see more of that on the wastewater side. And there's some bills that have been approved because some of the communities that have a hard time fixing up their wastewater systems are the poor communities, economically disadvantaged communities. So we're supporting and continue to fund programs that help the most economically disadvantaged communities also be able to modernize their wastewater systems.
Yeah, and this is one of these things, we can't kick the can down the road because these requirements are going to come online, and if we're not in compliance, there'll be fines, and if we wait, it will cost us more to build these plants. So I think we need to act now, and so I'm hoping maybe I can come to you later and then see if you could help us and find some funding and whatnot. But I would like to kick this back over to David because he's like to ask you some questions as well.
I might switch gears here, and you mentioned the industry of San Bernardino County is agriculture, and I agree with that. As an architect, I noticed the construction activity in our city has been down, and partly because in the 90s we were the fastest growing county of the state of California, or one of the fastest. And then with the downfall of the economy and because of the disparity of housing prices, but now you're not getting that migration to San Benito County or the city of Hollister, and the RDAs have been dissolved, and banks are not loaning money as like they had before for construction projects. You're not getting the development fees into the city coffers, and we talk a lot about smart growth and new urbanism, but the key to a sustainable community is job creation and entrepreneurial activity to reinvest in our community. With stimulus money available from the federal $787 billion, San Benito County with high unemployment rate really is per capita, their funding rate is like $727 per capita compared to $1,740, which would help stimulate the economy, our local economy. Is there anything as an assemblyman that you can do to promote a rural county like San Benito County for stimulus money and see if there's any ideas for job creation that might be in the works?
Well, this is a very good question, because in this economy, we all know that that's the most pressing issue for many communities throughout California, especially the small communities in the rural areas. Have been looking for real solutions. And coming from local government as a former mayor of my hometown, I always thought that certainly the envisioning of a community should always start with their general plan. That's where you get a lot of input from the community about where should Hollister or where should any city go within the next 20 to 25 years, where development taking place, where we're going to put jobs, where we're going to be future housing for a community. I think that document is very important because you get the input and ideas from the community. But certainly once you got your general plan, then it's how do you fulfill those goals that the community was envisioning in that document. And one of them, of course, every city has to compete nationally for federal funding, and you're competing for limited dollars with cities across the state, and that's where advocacy is really important. How do you bring in those community development block grants to bring in and bring economic development to a community?
Yes.
I'm working on, because redevelopment was eliminated. It was an important tool for the city of Hollister to bring in jobs, deal with blight. If there's contaminated sites, brownfields, how do you clean those up and put them to good public use? That tool is no longer with us.
Right.
But right now, I just filed a bill this week, AB 1080, which is a new tool with a lot of input from cities across California, a much more narrow version of redevelopment, but it's really intended for rural communities, poor communities, to, if they have high unemployment, which San Benito County has, there's high crime, which all our cities have, and there's areas that are dilapidated, areas that need infrastructure and improvement. This tool would let them use that local tax increment to reinvest. So even though redevelopment left, we have new tools on our way that we're going to be having these discussions in Sacramento. Hopefully, the bill I introduced with the support of the cities could be a tool that Hollister could use in future years. And the last thing I would say, that the other issue you'll be talking about next is certainly with having the Pinnacles named as a national park, we hope that could bring in more tourism dollars into our area. With tourism, you bring in people to shop in your stores, dine at your restaurants, stay at your local hotels. And certainly with that designation as the 59th National Park, I think it's an exciting time for San Benito County, and hopefully to invest a little bit to draw in more tourism.
Yeah. Speaking of the general plan, which I helped participate in, I agree with you that it's going to be a wonderful, overall blueprint for future growth and welcoming a mixed use in the downtown and opening up a range of possibilities. With the RDA, with Governor Brown's dissolving the measure because the state is in a fiscal crisis, I can see that point. But the unfortunate thing is the RDA provided a lot of jobs especially in the construction field. And when you have a healthy community, one of the good signs of a healthy community is having a construction base, which we need to get that back in the city of Hollister. And I appreciate what is the name of that?
It's called the California Revitalization and Investment Act. So it's a new tool that, but it's much more narrow, and it's trying to address some of the criticisms that used to exist of redevelopment. Those are gone. It's much more narrowly focused it's really intended for communities like Hollister that are rural, that are really struggling to bring in jobs into the communities.
Yeah, and I know, with the show's Going Green, and we talk about lowering our footprint, but I have to mention that we also need affordable housing in our community. It's when we looked at that housing element, I mean that was glaring how much we need affordable housing. So
and that's included in that bill I proposed too, that the former redevelopment would allocate 20% of those local tax increment dollars to stay local for affordable housing. That would bring that back within this particular tool. And I've talked to the governor's office, I talked to other legislators, everybody recognizes there's still a major need for a tool to continue doing affordable housing in communities throughout California.
That would be great. It'd be wonderful to see us getting going again and start
Exactly.
building and within our community.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the basis for everything.
Yeah, and I know in our next segment we're going to be talking about the Pinnacles Park redesignation to a national park, and I'm hoping that, yeah, indeed, that once that gets going and people find out about it, it will increase tourism through the gateway through Hollister as being one of the gateways, and it would increase and bring in jobs to our community. Yeah, so that I know that you attended that.
No, absolutely, and
Yeah.
that's exciting. And you know, there's people all throughout the world that make it a point to visit every national park in the United States. So certainly we hope that those people will flow in, and it'll only benefit our local businesses and our local economy.
Great. Well, I appreciate your work in that endeavor and bringing some stimulus to our community. I know a lot of folks are concerned about that. I think that San Benito County, even though it is a rural county, has a lot to offer with the wine trails, the historic downtown, and there's a lot of potential. And with that general plan, that is pretty progressive and going back to the old neo-traditional neighborhood concept about living and working in the same area, in the same environment, I think that certainly will be a benefit in the future, at least I'm hoping.
And I appreciate the work you're doing on water, because everything you just mentioned, water is the magic elixir for every one of those things. So,
And I'm excited that this year the governor's made it a priority to have a clean drinking water. Just last summer he created what was called the Governor's Drinking Water Stakeholder Group, just to focus on drinking water. So if you have leadership in the Assembly and the Senate and the governor all talking about making it a priority, I think this year we could advance some good goals and get some good work done in Sacramento.
that's great. That's exciting.
Sounds good. Assemblyman, is there a website if people want to get involved and having some interaction with what you're doing?
There is, of course.
and
My door is always open. I have an office in Hollister, satellite office in Watsonville, and of course my main office is in Salinas. But I think they'll put my website address on the screen. But also, if any community member wants to email me or call my office, me and my staff are always available, and we always look for input on different topics that are being debated in Sacramento, and certainly on the local issues as well, which are equally important.
And his office is at the Briggs Building in Hollister. Your staff's there every Tuesday? is
Every
it?
Tuesday.
Every
So you
Tuesday.
can
and
walk
they're
in, set up an appointment.
Very helpful people. So.
Always look forward to hearing from members of the public.
Great. Well, Louis, thank you for coming on the show, sir. I really appreciate
Thank you very
it.
much.
Appreciate
All
it.
right.
Yeah.
And our next segment, we'll be talking about the Pinnacles National Park redesignation ceremony. You're back watching Going Green TV. And we're going to talk about the ceremony that was held February 11th at the East Visitor Center. It was the Pinnacles redesignation ceremony, because now the Pinnacles is a national park. And on hand were Native Americans, first to live in the region prior to the homesteaders, members of the Ama Mutsun and Shaloni tribes. And after Val Lopez of the Ama Mutsun tribe offered a prayer song and Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish and English, was held there. U.S. Secretary Ken Salazar emphasized the celebration that brought together a diverse group of folks, and that the national park status means jobs and brought by tourism. Sam Farr also was on hand, and he stated that Theodore Roosevelt would be proud in the preservation of the park for generations of Americans. And also, our Assemblyman, Louis, was there, and it was a wonderful day. It was nice weather out there. It got a little chilly at the end, but local representatives, Mayor Ignacio was there from the city of Hollister, along with the mayor of Soledad, and the Assemblyman represents both Soledad and the city of Hollister, so both of those communities will now be gateways to the Pinnacles National Park. Right, so.
That's right.
So yeah, it was a proud day for everyone, and everyone had a good time, and it was just wonderful being part of that.
Welcome back. I just want to thank the State Assemblyman for being on our show today. There's a lot of things he's working on and working hard, and for our area in particular, San Benito County, along with the rest of his constituents. And then David, you report on the Pinnacles. It's exciting. We have a national park, huh?
Yeah, I want to thank you, my co-host, Mr. Novack, for bringing the State Assemblyman here to our show today.
Well, the Assemblyman staff, they were wonderful to work with.
Yeah, I know there are a lot of issues on water that you guys were talking about, but we had some time to talk about job creation too. It was good that we got that in.
We could go deeper like a well, okay?
Right.
But anyway, but thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next month.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.